we're going to start with what is Ebo in Ifá Spirituality. So this is ultimately the sacrifice. What we do when we go and shed animal blood. Some people also include the offerings and materials, which is part of it, but oftentimes when someone says Ebo, they're referring to the blood sacrifice of an animal in particular. And in Ifá, we are only sacrificing animals, not humans, not according to the traditional protocol. Absolutely, people do engage in human sacrifices. They use the same technology, the wisdom, and the information that comes from the protocols that pretty much any spiritual system would use that engages in any type of animal sacrifice. However, those are evil or malevolent devices. These are not things that are done according to the traditional way whereby you're going to sacrifice a human or something like that. So do keep that in mind, guys. Moving my screen a little bit so I can see you guys on Instagram. So the science behind it is it's basically a form of spiritual currency. Okay, the same way you pay for things in the natural world, you're going to exchange something for something. It is a quid pro quo situation, something for something. And so we give in order to get. There's nothing free in the spiritual realm. And if you are wise as a human being, you would not give away things for free either, because it creates a void. Spirits want something in exchange for the extra or higher level energy that they put out. The same way that you go to an employer, you work every day, you want something in exchange for that energy. Now, there are two common ways, I should say, that this process is done. Number one, you are going to have what we consider to be mandatory Ebo or sacrifice, and this is performed to basically fulfill a prescription, if you will, after an Ifá reading. So if you go and you get Ifá divination, you are going to get a prescription which will say certain animals are required. Also, other materials, again, will be required in that as well, but those are the offerings. And you need to pay your bills, so to speak, if you want the Orishas to work on your behalf, okay? There's also a such thing as a voluntary sacrifice. So this is basically when you decide on your own that you just want to go and you want to give a specific Orisha, your ancestors, Ori, all of those forces, any of those forces, it doesn't have to be all at once, but any of those forces, a voluntary sacrifice or an offering. That's actually referred to as Ebo. For the sake of clarity, though, I'm just using sacrifice. Even so, the word Ebo, the term Ebo in the Yoruba language specifically refers to the offerings that are given to Eshu and Yami. However, in the diaspora, they have become to be known as the offerings or the sacrifices in general to any Orisha. So I'm basically using that connotation of the term here instead of the full, definition from the Yoruba standpoint. But either way, we're talking about giving sacrifices. So it's in a way where you can say, I just want to give on my own, the voluntary part where you're just praising the Orishas and you are maybe thankful for something that they've done for you, or you just, you just feel in your spirit, I just need to give to a particular Orisha. That happens to me all the time. Personally, I'll just feel like I need to go and give an offering to this particular Orisha. A lot of times it's my Ori or my Egbe room. And so you can absolutely do those things when you decide to do so. That's not mandatory. Absolutely. Multi-talented. You're saying you didn't know what? If you could explain that a little bit, please. So there are so many dimensions to this particular process. Do keep in mind, I want you guys to look at it. I'm going to give you two different examples. So one example is for those who are coming maybe from a Christian background. You can look at this in the same way that you would look at it as tithes and offerings, okay? Tithes would be those mandatory things that you give. And of course, in the Christian world today, this is in the form of money. But if you go back to the Old Testament, the tithes and offerings were actually animals. They were actually sacrifices, okay? And they were laid out in the Levitical order as far as what should be given when, so forth and so on, to atone for different sins or situations that you maybe need help with, health, etc., things like that. Greetings, all that are coming in on all platforms. Welcome. Thank you all for showing up. Also, when it comes to this notion of like tithes and offerings, so tithes are going to be the mandatory things that you would give from a Christian perspective. This, according to interpretations of biblical record, is supposed to be 10% of your income. And I say that because it's not really written in the Bible that it must be 10%. That's based off of the offering that Abraham gave to, I think it was Melchizedek. If I'm getting the names wrong, forgive me, it's been a long time, but I do remember bits and pieces of that. And so that's kind of where that standard came from, but it was a must, so to speak, right? And then the offerings were anything above that you just kind of wanted to give. You just felt like, I want to go and give this, okay? That's an example from a religious perspective for anybody who does come from Christianity. Now, I'm going to give an example from the secular world, so to speak. So think about it as you working, like you have a job. So you have to go to work in order to fulfill certain duties, in order to keep your job, and also to make the pay that you agreed to make, whether you're salaried or hourly, whatever that looks like, right? But those are still the mandatory requirements. You got to go to work maybe 40 hours a week and fulfill XYZ duties, and then you're going to get so much pay. But then you can also choose to work overtime, right? So that's the mandatory part, is the Ebo that comes after you get that Ifá reading. You are required to go ahead and pay that in order to get what you desire to get on the other end of that. But the overtime work will be similar to you just getting that extra, right? Because you want to get it for whatever reason. Maybe you need to pay off some bills, so forth and so on, but it's not mandatory, okay? Absolutely. Thank you, guys. Thank you for coming in. I'm trying my best. So, definitely let me know, guys, if this is resonating with you, these examples and everything that I'm giving out. So these are just like two examples that you can kind of understand this process in day-to-day life as we live it, or, for people who maybe are coming from, or maybe even still into Christianity or another religious system that operates off of this particular principle, which they all do operate off of it. It's just that in like the modern day systems, it's a money exchange versus an animal sacrifice, in the same way we do it in Ifá and other indigenous systems. So what is the point of that, right? Like, how does giving sacrifices help us out? Like, what problems do they resolve, etc.? Basically, giving Ebo can assist you in any aspect of your life, right? So Ifá resolves any problems. It's not relegated to one specific aspect of life. You can come if you're having problems with your health, with your marriage, with your, any relationship that you're dealing with. It doesn't have to be marriage in the sense that we think of it in the Western world. It could be pretty much anything. Your relationships with your children, co-workers, friends, okay? Obviously, money, finances, that's probably one of the biggest one that I get most often. People are having some kind of financial troubles. If you need help in your business, if you need protection, right? If you're having spiritual attacks, you can definitely get that protection. But also if you're having attacks from people, like, sending some spiritual darts your way, you can get Ebo performed, sacrifices done. You're giving that energy. You're paying the Orishas to help you out. So you can think about it like, if you're having health issues, you're paying that Orisha the same way that you would pay a doctor to diagnose your problem, give you the medicine that you need, right? If you need protection, you go out and pay somebody in real life, like a bodyguard or something, to protect you or to guard you, or you may, that's pretty extreme, probably for somebody with like a high profile position, but you could buy like maybe an alarm system. You got to pay for that, right? And you got to pay for the coverage for somebody to consistently monitor the home, etc. The police have to be paid if they're called out, etc. So that's why you will pay that monthly alarm bill. Same thing goes when we're getting assistance from the Orishas, from our ancestors on a high level. This is for them to help you out when you are having challenges or roadblocks. Will they help you outside of Ebo? Yes, but they may not help you obviously they're not helping you in the same way if it's something extreme, especially if there are blockages, because that's what happens most of the time. There is some kind of blockage and they need to go and fight on your behalf in order to help you to get over that hurdle and get to the next level. That doesn't mean that they don't assist you, though, without you always giving them sacrifices and offerings. It's just when you have specific needs that you need caring for, and you get a need for a reading to see what's going on, because obviously you're stuck in a particular area of your life, and usually it's going to be something spiritual going on that's blocking you, and the Orishas need to come in, the ancestors, whomever is going to help you out with that particular situation, okay? When it comes to getting the resolve that you need, it can come directly or indirectly, right? So let's say, you are having issues with your health, for instance. You go, you do your Ebo, your sacrifices. You can maybe experience instantaneous healing without anything else, not even so much as having to take spiritual medicine or anything like that. Or it can also come indirectly in the way that the ancestors or the Orishas, rather, whatever forces actually you're given to, because it could be either one. It depends on what comes up in the reading. So they could then assist you, whichever spiritual force is responsible, they could then assist you in finding the right doctor to help diagnose your problem or to heal you. You could actually get the physical healing, but it may be that they're going to take you or help you to find and negotiate with the right doctor to get the treatment that you need at that time. Or maybe it could be a specific herbal remedy or something like that. So they're going to show you over time, where do you go to get what you need to get. So there may be extra steps in the process. So I got a question real quick for those with monetary issues. How would the Orishas assist since the sacrifices can't be afforded? I'm going to say, and I always say this, thank you for that question. It's a really great question as well. You are, okay. So I guess I answered, you said I'm answering it now. Okay. So I guess you were talking, I thought you were saying initially, like, how do you go and get the Ebo if you can't afford it? I always say in that case, just in case somebody does want to know the answer to that particular question, I always say, pray, ask your ancestors, ask your spiritual team to assist you. I'm in this situation, provide a way. They will oftentimes provide a way. But let me tell you this, when they provide a way, usually it will be the exact amount that you need for that Ebo to do the sacrifices, and you need to take that money and use it for the sacrifices. Don't say, oh, I got this extra money now, so I'm just going to use it whatever way I choose to use it, because that's not how it works either. So you want to be careful. You want to be absolutely careful when it comes to those things whenever you do get money or whatever resources that you may need to assist you in moving forward in any type of spiritual work. That has happened to me on occasion where I wanted to do Ebo, and I was like, I don't, I'm not going to say I didn't fully have it. I just didn't have it for that at that particular moment. And so I did ask my spiritual team, like, hey, I need the money for this. If y'all want me to do this, provide the money. And they provided the exact amount. I mean, when I tell you down to the dollar, they provided the exact amount. It came out of nowhere, wasn't expecting it. It was like, it was some kind of government check, I think, that I got in the mail. And it didn't even make any sense, right? But it was like the same exact amount that I needed to do my sacrifices. And I went ahead and did it, like, because that's something that I did wish to do. So it wasn't like I was going to take it and do something else with it. Sometimes people do take it and do something else with it, and you're going to get yourself in a lot of problems when you do that. Okay. Somebody is saying, I could be wrong, but can ask Sopele if you lower the payment, but most time Ifá provides. So we're going to get to that. It's not necessarily lowering the payment, like the cost of actually doing the Ebo, but sometimes there are situations where you can substitute certain animals for other animals, because that's going to be the most expensive part. Like live animals that have been well prepared for sacrifice. So we're not just talking about going somewhere and just grabbing any old kind of animal. Like it's just like in the Bible, for those of you all who understand that context. It was always outlined that you give the best. So when they're doing sacrifices and offerings on your sacrifice, rather on even both sacrifices and offerings, they're going to go and get the best. You want them to go and get the best. I'll say it that way. So hopefully that's what they are doing. That's going to cost more. These animals have been bred for high level things like sacrifices and things of that nature. These animals are not just, these, chemically injected species that you go and you buy and you eat out of the grocery store. That's not how that works, right? And so it's not a matter of you just saying, well, a chicken only costs this much in the store. First of all, it's a live animal. You buy a live animal, it's going to be more expensive most of the time than any animal that you just go and buy out of the store, because that animal has a completely different value on it than a dead animal does. A live animal can reproduce, right? So it has much more value. But even then, you want an animal that is raised in a very clean way, all right? Kosher, for lack of a better term, at the moment. You want something that's raised really, really well. And so we're going to dig into that. I hope I did answer your question. I think I kind of got lost in the question when I was saying all of that. But going back to what I was saying, okay, Daniela, thank you. You said beautiful reminder to appeal to our ancestors in prayer. Ashe, absolutely, guys. Make sure that you are asking for the help that you need, because if you do, you can absolutely get it. But again, if you get it, use it for the right purposes, okay? Let's see. So we were talking about it can be directly or indirectly. So let's now move forward to the process that's involved in determining the Ebo, because we always get this question as well. I get a lot of questions specifically about egbe. A lot of people are asking me, like, how do you know, how to appease your egbe, which appeasing egbe is the same thing, or egbe arun, which are your astral mates. It's the same process. It's about giving Ebo or sacrifices. How do you know what to give them? Through Ifá divination. That's it, right? When you're working with the Ifá system, that's how you know what they need when it comes to your specific needs, right? So if you are having some type of challenge or problem, you can absolutely go and just say, I want to give a particular sacrifice or offering right now, but it may not resolve the issue that you're facing. So be mindful of that, right? Most of the time when it's just given on your own, it could be just intuitively, I need to feed my Ori or what have you. But if you're dealing with something specific, it's always better to go and do Ifá divination or even an investigation. And I'll get to that shortly as well. So that's how you know when it comes to what you need to feed them just to resolve a specific problem rather. If you're giving it voluntarily, then you can do that through what we call a spiritual investigation or checking or something like that. And this is just basically where you say, okay, for instance, I want to feed Ogun today, right? I just feel like I want to give something to Ogun. For those of you all who don't know, Ogun is my personal head Orisha. So I might just say I want to feed Ogun. And so I'm gonna go and I'm gonna ask our Odessa, what should I be feeding Ogun, right? What is the best thing to feed Ogun? So he might say, okay, a chicken is fine. He'll go and check. He's not going to just say it on his own. I don't mean it that way. He'll go and check and determine what is the best offering to give Ogun at that time. Because even when you're feeding an Orisha voluntarily, you still want to check and be sure that they want what you're actually trying to give them, right? Usually, of course, it's easier to do those lower level offerings like giving a chicken or something like that, but that may not be what Ogun wants that day. Ogun may want a goat because he's going to do some heavy lifting on my behalf. So, I might have to feed Ogun a goat or even a dog or something like that. Those are the higher level offerings that he accepts specifically. So that could be the case as well. So I oftentimes say, because sometimes it does come up in Ifá divination that somebody's close to a specific spiritual force and they need to be feeding this particular force on a regular basis. So it could be like you're really close to your group of Ego. You need to be feeding them on, continuously. And so it's up to you when you decide to go and do the offerings or what have you. But it's always good to do a spiritual investigation to just see what should I give at this particular time. What offering should I be giving to, this particular Orisha that I desire to give to? Because that's important as well. Okay, so it's similar to you in the natural world, right? When you get ready to eat, you might love chicken, you might love pork, you might love steaks, etc., etc. But at that particular moment, you might only want just one thing. Maybe you want some shrimp that day, and nothing else is going to satisfy your palate but shrimp in that moment. And you could be offered like a whole plate of all those other things that I just mentioned, but nothing is going to satisfy you at that particular time. Excuse me, guys, outside of shrimp. So think about it that way as well. It may be that Orisha wants something specific, so you do want to check. It's also important that only a well-trained Ifá priest or priestess give sacrifices on your behalf. This is not something that you should be going out doing on your own unless you have been trained in the process and you also are initiated in the process and understand what you're doing. This is not something that you should just be doing on your own. Be very, very careful with that, because people do put out a lot of information online, unfortunately, and they're telling you to go and feed Orishas certain things, etc., different spirits. I see it in all the traditions. Go and feed this particular spirit these different things. And if you're not training what you are doing, you can cause yourself so many different problems. You can invite in the wrong spiritual forces. You could feed the wrong thing to the Orisha, which is taboo, and that could cause problems as well. And I'm going to get into that later on. So do be careful about that. Also, it could be somebody that's closely linked to the owl that did your reading for you. So the priest or the priestess. So if they're already working together, what I mean by closely linked is that these individuals are working together, usually in the same temple, and the priest says, you know what, we got this offering to do for this individual. So they pass the work of doing the sacrifice off to a priest that they are working with. This person is telling them to do it. I am not referring to you going to one person and getting an Ifá reading and getting, like, this is what I need, to get done, and then taking that reading to a different priest that has nothing at all to do with the one that you're working with and say, can you do these offerings on my behalf? That's never a good idea. That's never something that you should do. Okay, guys. Let's see. When should Ebo be performed? So, number one, if you get an Ifá reading, immediately after that reading is done, as soon as possible. So, in the traditional world, like somebody may be right there with the priest or what have you, and if they have like the animals available in that particular area, they may go ahead and do the offering right away. But it could even so be delayed if they have to then go and get the animals. So if you're doing it remotely, I'm going to say between 2 to 3 days, you want your offering to be done. You shouldn't be waiting a long time to get that work done as soon as possible. Okay. You're saying an in-network reference. So it's not really an in-network reference in this situation where you're making the decision, even so, to have somebody else do the offering. It's really the sacrifice, rather. It's really that priest saying, okay, you go ahead and do this, because they're working together at the same temple, and they often work together. That's very, very common in the tradition out of Yoruba land, where you have multiple priests working in the same temple area together. And so they are going to help each other out, even with pulling the old dude. That's just a common process, right? But again, these are people who are already working together. They know each other. They know that this other person is competent, and they know what they're doing, etc. It's not that you just passing it off to somebody that has nothing to do with the initial process at all. All right. When it comes to doing voluntary sacrifices unto Orishas, you can do this anytime you desire, right? It may just come to you. I want to give this sacrifice to whatever Orisha. It's perfectly fine to do that. If you do it every day if you want to. You can even just set in your mind, like, I want to do this once a month. I want to give to my Ori or something like that, or my ancestors, etc. Absolutely. Ebo should be performed within days of the reading. That's a question I'm getting here on Instagram. It should be done ASAP, as soon as possible. And that's another reason why, if you're working with a priest or a priestess, that they may pass that duty off to somebody else who is working with them in the temple, because they want to get that out as soon as possible. So you get a reading back. You don't even want to wait forever to go ahead and initiate your ritual process. You want to do it as soon as you possibly can. This is another question that I often get asked about the materials that are required when it comes to sacrifices. So most of the time, it's going to be an animal sacrifice. Most of the time, we're doing a life force offering. There's some rare cases where it is not based on any type of animal sacrifice at all. But again, very, very rare situation, not common. As I always say, different Orishas take different sacrifices and offerings. We do cover this in more depth in the course that we have. We have an Ifá Orisha divination course, which guides you through the different offerings that different Orishas accept and things like that. And we also show you the different sacrifices and offerings. We also show you how to do like certain offerings for people who have Orisha pots. I don't post this publicly as far as which Orisha takes XYZ, because it requires context. You can't, as I said before, I wouldn't just tell somebody you go out and you give XYZ to this particular Orisha without giving them the context and the understanding that this should be done by somebody who is trained in this process, so that they understand what's going on. Okay. There are certain circumstances where you can temporarily temporarily substitute some lower level offerings for higher level offerings. So again, as I said before, the higher level the animal, the more expensive it's going to cost. You can do that comparison just by going to the grocery store. It costs more to buy steak than it does to buy chicken, right? So the same scenario is going to apply if you are sacrificing, a higher level animal for a lower level animal, or a lower level animal rather. So it may come up that a certain sacrifice is needed, but you can't afford that particular sacrifice, right? So it may be a goat, for instance, and you cannot afford the goat at that time, but you want to go ahead and get that offering out because you're dealing with a situation that requires some level of urgency. You can go ahead and give like maybe a chicken in that case because it will be less expensive for you, but you still need to come back and do that goat as soon as possible. I can't give you a time frame. You want to check with your owl to see like when do I really need to get this goat in to resolve this situation, right? Because it goes back to that same concept that I was saying before. If the Orishas ask for something, that's what they want at that time. You don't just give them what you desire to give them, right? If they're going to work on your behalf, especially when you're dealing with a specific challenge in your life, you definitely want to give them what they ask for. But if it's a situation that requires urgency, it may be the case that you can do the lower level for the higher level temporarily. Consult with whoever you're working with when it comes to situations like that. So I had a question here. When doing Ebo, do we get to feel the spiritual exchange? It's a very good question. Sometimes I've had clients say like they felt the exact moment that the Ebo, the animal was sacrificed on their behalf. So I think that has more to do with how spiritually inclined you are. It doesn't happen for everyone, but it does happen for some people. Sometimes I can feel it when like the sacrifice has been done. I just know, okay, this was completed on my behalf already. It doesn't happen all the time and it doesn't happen frequently to me, but for some clients it does. You're saying when practicing voodoo, when I give sacrifices, make a petition, a dream would come to me, just show me what was granted or what was denied and why. Absolutely. That does happen quite often, that you will have certain dreams after you've done some sacrifices. That happens to me quite often. I do dream a lot. So I will be shown different things in my dream about what's going on in my scenario. So that is common. That's a form of spiritual communication. So definitely everybody won't experience it. So I'm not going to say to expect it, but it could possibly happen in your circumstance, depending on, your level of spirituality, I guess, like how connected you are to the spiritual realm. So we talked about the lower level and the higher level. In general, you can always give the higher level offerings though, even if a lower level is requested in general. So there are some situations though where you can't substitute, even if it's a lower level offering. This is normally going to apply when an Orisha asks for something that they normally don't accept. So I'm gonna give you this example. Like for instance, Ogun typically accepts certain offerings. Snails are not part of his normal offering. So if he requests snails, even though they are considered a lower level offering, especially in terms of finances and things like that, than like maybe a goat or a dog or something like that. But if he asks for snails, you want to give him snails because that's out of the normal range of things that he would typically ask for in an offering. Again, any substitutions, you want to consult with the diviner, the owl, whoever is doing the reading for you. Okay. You're saying for some reason you can't feel it, but I can always feel when my Ifá is in need of attention. So you're probably really closely connected to Ifá. That happens to me a lot with Ori. I know when Ori needs attention. Ori is going to tell me, hey, I need something today. So I always know. And some people will know. And again, it's usually whatever energy that really, really works closely to you, that's when you're going to feel when certain ones need certain things. I can feel it too sometimes when my ancestors are saying that they really need something. So it can vary, just depends on the person and the spirit that's working with them. So how long does it take for Ebo to work? How long does it take for all of these rituals and things like that? All right, as I said before, sometimes it can happen immediately, right away, directly. Just soon as you do it, it just manifests. But typically, this is not the case. Usually, the results are going to manifest within a year, or at least start manifesting. Let me clarify that as well, because it's not always that everything is going to come right away. If you're dealing with a major issue, you may see bits and pieces of that issue manifest over that year time frame, and you may even need to do extra work or something like that to get it all out. Right, so you'll need to have those discussions with your owl or whoever did the reading for you to know where you are, where you stand in that circumstance. How do you know it's manifesting? I know, obviously, if you experience the changes that you desire, you know that it worked. Or if you avoid certain problems that either were told to you in the reading, like this could happen, you may, end up having this particular problem at this particular time within this particular time frame, and you do your Ebo and you don't experience that problem, obviously you know that it was, it worked. Or it could be a situation, especially somebody like going to court or something like that, and you go and you get some work done and the judgment is in your favor. That's a specific example of showing you like this actually worked. I'm going to say for me, you just feel it. Like you just know, right? You see it happening, but for something that's more abstract where you're being told like this could happen if you don't move forward in this way, you just have a sense of knowing that this worked out in my behalf and I avoided this particular issue. So that's how it's worked out for me. And a lot of clients too, they say the same thing. They just know like they avoided something deep by doing that Ebo. That being said, let me take another question. You're saying, are there other Orishas that work quicker than others, like in Vodun, like Dental works faster than Dambala? No, and to be honest, I don't like I get what you're saying, and I know like the connotation there as far as Dental working faster than Dambala, but it's really about what's going on and what needs to happen in that particular situation. They work things out based on how they need to be worked out for you. An example here would be somebody seeking healing from a health-related issue. Let's say they have cancer and they got cancer from smoking, right? So the Orisha may take some time to help them to heal, because in that process, they're also teaching that person that they need to stop smoking, right? Because if they heal that cancer and it's gone, but the person continues to smoke, what's going to happen? It's going to come right back. So it really depends on the circumstance or the situation in which is occurring. And really, I mean, I personally had the same scenario occur in the voodoo tradition. It really depends on what you're dealing with and what spiritual forces are responsible for helping you, and really what you need in that situation, because it's really not about the spirit, it's about what you need and how you need it to affect you, because it's all about balancing things out on your behalf. So I wouldn't say that there's one. There are some spirits that are known to be really, really quick in action, but again, you're going to get the help from a spiritual force that you need at that particular time in your situation. Okay, so now I want to go to your role in the effectiveness of Ebo, because this is important as well. It's not all about the Orishas just doing the work for you, no more than it is like when you go to the doctor, you get a diagnosis and you get a prescription. You got to take the prescription, right? And definitely the Ebo itself is part of the prescription, but there may be other things that come along with it. So, for instance, the reading could also come with taboos and warnings. So, it could be this is what you do as far as getting what you desire. So, this is the sacrifice that we need to help you out in this situation. But you need to avoid doing X, Y, Z. But you continue to do X, Y, Z. So the remedy, it could be effective or it could be much less effective. Either way, you could undo it by violating taboos and warnings. So even if it works out on your behalf, because you're violating what you need to do, then you're just going to have the same problem all over again, similar to what I was saying about the cancer, right? You go and get relief from cancer, whether you go through allopathic care or the spiritual route, makes no difference. You got that cancer because you smoke. You got lung cancer, for instance, because you smoke. You keep smoking, you are going to continuously have that issue, most likely. So it might leave, like a surgeon can go in and take the cancer away from you, same way the Orisha can remove it from you. But if you continue to smoke, it's just going to come back in the same place. You're going to have the same problem. So compliance is 100% important as well. It's also important for you to keep a positive mindset and attitudes. Not that the ritual won't work, the sacrifice does not work if you're not positive. But again, you can negate your blessings. You can push them away from you if you focus on nothing but negativity. So let's use an example here. You're doing some ritual where you do a sacrifice in order to get the love that you want, like you're seeking a relationship or something like that. And the rituals and everything work. The sacrifices are given, the Orishas bring their love to you. But you got such nasty, poor attitude, negative attitude, and you feel like, nobody will ever love me, or you don't deserve to have the love that you desire. So when that person comes into your life, your behavior is going to push them away from you, because you're probably going to engage in self-sabotage, right? And either push them away from you wholeheartedly, or you guys have so many relationship issues that you may feel like it's not even worth it. You may even start feel like this isn't the love for me because of your poor mental attitude. So that's important as well. You also want to always remain respectful, grateful to the spirits for anything that they do for you, okay? That's just common sense. If somebody does something to help you out in a situation, whether you paid them to do it or they did it for free, they want to see gratitude from you, because in doing so, when you need something in the future, they're more likely to come and aid you in a helpful or respectful way, not begrudgingly or something like that. So do keep that in mind. And also, it's not that the Orishas will not help you in the future if you're not grateful. However, your Ori could block them from doing so if you have an ungrateful attitude, because your Ori is what says yes or no, we are going to accept this blessing on your behalf. So if you have a really poor mental attitude there, Ori might say you don't deserve this blessing. So I don't care who has what for you, you're not getting it. Okay. Okay, so we got a question. Are taboos temporary based on advice from a reading or long-term? Initially, I assume this concept only applied to initiates, but they were revealed through a groups reading for me. Okay, very good question. They can actually be both temporary and permanent. You always want to ask whether or not they are. So a lot of times through readings, they will be temporary, but they could be permanent, especially when it comes to things that are related to your connection to a specific Orisha. A lot of times that's going to be permanent. But again, if they don't explicitly say in the reading process that this is permanent or this is temporary, you always want to ask. Okay, so what happens if you don't complete Ebo? This is like probably one of the most frequently asked questions. Like, I got this reading and it came with all of this stuff, and I don't want to do it, or I don't know if I want to do it, or I don't have the money to do it, whatever the excuse is, right? You don't want to go and get a reading. You're welcome. You do not want to go and get a reading if you are not prepared to do the sacrifices and the offerings that come along with it. Otherwise, what's the point? If you just want information, go and get a psychic reading, a tarot reading, something like that. Don't do Ifá divination, because Ifá divination is always going to come back with some form of Ebo that is required. So you want the Orishas help, you're going to have to pay them for their help. That's how it goes. If you don't do the reading, then most likely your situation is going to stay the same, or it could get worse, because that obviously would happen too, especially if you're dealing with, pretty much any type of hemorrhage in any part of your life, whether it be your health, whether it be your finances, relationship, or whatever. It's just going to get worse, right? And if you don't do it then and then you come back later on, it's probably going to be different as far as what they're requesting at that time, right? So it could be a higher level offering, or it could be a lower level offering. You don't know what's going to happen. But if you wait so long, like let's say you get a reading today and you wait like maybe 2 weeks to perform the Ebo and so forth and so on, you have not made any progress towards doing any of it, then it probably is going to be different if you want to proceed thereafter. So you probably have to get another reading or something like that. Again, it's just always not to do a reading. Not wise to do a reading unless you are prepared to do the sacrifice. Pointless to get Ifá divination otherwise. So what happens when you do it and it's not performed properly? Because this can happen as well. This comes with knowing who you are working with and understanding what Ifá divination is all about. So, number one, if it's done incorrectly and the priest or the priestess does not violate any taboos, and what I mean here is that each Orisha has taboos, things that they do not accept, right? So if the priest or the priestess does the sacrifice, but they're not violating any of those taboos, meaning they're not giving that Orisha anything that it does not accept, you just likely won't experience any changes. You won't experience the results that you were looking for at the end of the day. However, there is some scenarios where it can be that they are violating the taboos. Matter of fact, if they're violating taboos, it is done incorrectly, period, point blank. You will probably experience some negativities from that, because you do not want to give an Orisha something that it definitely does not accept. It's like forbidden, like I do not take this. This is why it's so important to have somebody do the reading and also do the sacrifices who know what they are doing. Okay. Now I'm going to touch on a few special considerations that I often get asked about when it comes to doing the sacrifices and offerings and things like that. So can you do Ebo on behalf of someone else, or can somebody else do Ebo on behalf of you? Can they do the sacrifices? Absolutely. As long as you have their information, their proper information, or they have your proper information. So that would be your birth name, right? For women, we ask for the maiden name, the name that you were actually born for, and the mother's name, the mother's first and last maiden name again. So if you have that proper information, you don't want to do a reading off of a nickname or something like that, a common name. Definitely not a fake name at all, right? You want to do the reading off of the proper names there. This is very common for people to do sacrifices on behalf of other people when it comes to like their children, especially maybe their spouse or their mate sometimes, or their parents, especially when it comes to special circumstances. That being said, I personally don't encourage you to do sacrifices on behalf of somebody who is capable of doing it themselves. understand that it is a sacrifice, right? So obviously it's better for that person if they're capable financially or otherwise of doing it on their own behalf, for them to do it on their behalf, because they need to give up something in their process. It's just, in my opinion, it's just more beneficial if they are doing it for themselves. Okay. When it comes to pregnant or menstruating women, you can absolutely do sacrifices, get them done rather, on your behalf when you are in such a condition, whether you're pregnant or you're going through menstruation. That being said, on your own, women who are menstruating, you should not typically be given offerings. So, like if you possess an Orisha pot or something like that, you do not want to give offerings during your menstrual cycle when you are actively in your flow. When you got blood coming out of your period, you do not want to be giving offerings and things like that. Or even if you are initiated and you're trained in the process of doing the sacrifices on your own, that's not something you want to do when you're menstruating. Okay. And I got a question too about this on one of my videos about wearing elekis. Somebody was like, can you wear elekis when you're menstruating? You can do that because that's different. That's not a ritual. That's not a sacrifice or an offering. This the consecrated beads. They've already been consecrated, so you can wear them anytime. For the most part, there are some stipulations, so definitely check out the video I did on elekis. It's available on the YouTube channel. Now, does Ebo work with other spiritual practices? Meaning, can you practice Reiki, or can you do meditation and yoga and so forth and so on, and still be working with Ifá to get your sacrifices and offerings done? Absolutely. So I want you to think about it this way. Ebo is the mandatory spiritual payment. So any positive practices are like giving a tip, right? So, think about it in that way. If you go into a restaurant, you have to pay for the dish that you just ate, the service that you just had, etc. However, you give something extra to that waitress or that waiter. So especially the next time you come back, they're going to be more than joyful and happy to help you out, more so than somebody who is not giving an extra tip. Okay, so you are going to use those things to just help you out to go to that next level. The tip from this aspect would be you engaging in something that is going to elevate your mindset, right? So anytime you're doing something positive for yourself, you're feeding Ori. Think about it that way too. So that is the tip for you. You're making Ori happy. So, the Ebo is just going to work even better for you in most instances. So you're saying, I learned that late. I was told that the Orishas would think we are giving blood sacrifices. Do you mean when you're wearing the elekis? Because as I said, I would not I do not engage in ritual work, offerings and things like that whenever I am ministrating. And I don't encourage other women to do so unless it's just an emergency situation where you have no other choice. But if you have the choice of somebody else doing the offering or the sacrifice on your behalf, I would encourage you to go that route in general. All right, so now how do I find somebody to do an offering for me, to do a reading and an offering? Because you obviously would want them to come together. So how do you find a trustworthy diviner? Get that all the time, right? So you're saying when feeding the Orishas on your menstrual cycle. Yes. I don't know if it's that they would think that you're giving them the blood sacrifice or not, unless you're taking your menstrual blood and actually feeding it to them. But you got to remember a menstrual cycle itself, and I'm going to get back to this, guys. A menstrual cycle itself is a ritual. It is a cleansing ritual. A lot of times when we do cleansing rituals, even in spiritual work, you want to do that cleansing ritual first then you go and do other types of rituals. Because what are we doing? We're removing the toxicity. A woman has a menstrual cycle to remove all of the toxins, the debris, and things like that from her own body and her own spiritual force. Also, if she is sexually active, she is removing the toxins from the male. This is why it's so important to be careful about who you sleep with, ladies, because anytime a man ejaculates inside of you, he is releasing a lot of toxins also inside of you. He's releasing physical toxins, but also emotional, right? Toxins and spiritual toxins and things like that inside of your body. So your menstrual flow is used to remove those things. So you want to be careful. There's a whole nother lesson. I don't want to get too deep into that for the males that are in here with me. So I might do a whole separate section about the menstrual cycle. And guys, you're welcome to come because it will be great for you as well when it comes to like your daughters or your mates or what have you. But yeah, be careful about engaging in certain types of ritual work when you're menstruating. All right. So getting back to what I was saying about finding a trustworthy diviner, because this is a huge question that people always ask. First of all, I encourage you to outline the specifications. What are you looking for in a diviner, right? The same thing you would look for when you're trying to find any other professional to do work for you. If you're looking for a doctor to take care of your medical care, if you're looking for even a plumber to come and take care of your, bathroom or whatever you need them for, outline what you're looking for. If their personality is important, if their sex or their gender is important, all of those things. Figure out what it is that you want, right? Because you can't just work with anybody. That's not advisable in pretty much anything that we do in life. No matter how good their work is, you want to make sure that you can actually vibe with that person because you need to be able to communicate with them. I get these questions a lot, so many different questions a lot by people who are actually getting work done from other people. And I don't mind answering certain questions. I'm never going to answer questions about a reading that they gave you because you need to go to them for that. But it's just certain things that they don't get explained to them. And if you're working with somebody, guys, you need to be able to go and communicate those things with them, right? So, think about things like that. Can I communicate with this person? Do I feel comfortable with going to them, asking them certain questions, etc.? You're saying, I appreciate this learning opportunity. Oh, you are very, very welcome. And thank you for showing up. Next, search online or ask for recommendations or referrals. Pretty much nowadays, you can find so many different readers that are available online. Of course, we do remote work at Asanee 44. So our Adisa is based in Nigeria. I'm based here in Arizona. You guys can still get a reading from us. We work with so many different people. But of course, there are other readers and so forth that you can also find available online. Do your homework. Once you know what you're looking for, what you desire in a reader, like is this somebody I can talk to? Is this somebody I can have a long conversation with? Then, go ahead and start the process. Referrals are great if you already know somebody who is working with somebody and they're satisfied with who they're working with. They can also be very, very helpful. We get a lot of clients through referrals because people love our work. And so I'm grateful for that. And I thank everybody who has ever done a referral because you guys have been so absolutely supportive of our efforts here. But that's a great way too, just knowing somebody who is already working with someone. Once you start working with that person, observe their conduct. You're not married to that person just because you get a reading from them. Okay. Take your time. Figure out, what happened during that reading process. Is it something that you're satisfied? What did you like about it? What didn't you like about it? Right. And then make your decision if you want to continue on with them. Okay. Above any and everything else, trust your intuition when it comes to working with somebody. That's why I always advocate developing a relationship with your higher self, your Ori, your inner head, your spiritual head, whatever you want to call that particular force. Develop a connection with that force. Learn to listen to it. Learn to trust it. When something feels off, it probably is off. And so you do not want to travel down that path, because so many different things can happen, as we just talked about before, with them doing the wrong work. I cannot tell you how much work, negative work, we have had to work with people through because somebody went in and botched up their sacrifices, their offerings, or just gave them a completely inaccurate reading altogether. So trust your gut, guys. And I always advocate too, start working with your ancestors so they can lead you in the direction that you need to go in. I'm about to close up shortly. This is the last section. If you guys have any more questions, please be free. Feel free to go ahead and put them in the chat box, whatever platform you're on, and I will definitely try to get them out before we conclude. So, why do we do all of this work? Why do we do all these sacrifices continuously? How do they help us? How do they impact our destiny? Number one, they're going to remove any type of spiritual blockages, negative energy, past karmic influences, things like that are in your way. This is about balance and harmony. They're going to balance you out, okay? You're asking, when doing a reading, do you go off of the Odu that comes out, or does your Ori tell you? So if you're doing an Ifá reading, Ifá, the oracle, Orumula, is actually speaking through an Ifá reading, not your Ori. I think you're thinking more so about voodoo when it comes to that. So, and what happens is, yes, an Odu is generated. We personally do not do any form of intuitive work integrated in Ifá divination, because Ifá divination is actually supposed to come from the Odu. It is not meant to be intuitive. That being said, that doesn't mean that you can't get an intuitive reading. And even if the diviner you work with does intuitive type of readings, they really shouldn't be mixing that in with an Ifá reading and telling you that Ifá said something when that is coming from a different source, right? Because you can also you can go and get a reading, and just work specifically with your ancestors, for instance. An ancestor reading and an Ifá reading is not the same thing. It may bring down the same information, and most likely will bring down very similar information if it's done around the same time. But when you do an Ifá reading, you are connecting with Ifá, the oracle, and you're bringing down the Odu. When you do an ancestor reading, you are connecting with that person's ancestors. Most of the time, people do intuitive readings, they are working with your Ori. Hope I clarified that for you. Also, when it comes to your destiny, it ensures that your actions and your decisions are in harmony with the spiritual path that you have chosen, or the spiritual path that you are on. So it's very, very important to do the Ebo to make sure that you are constantly in alignment, okay? This also brings in favorable energies into your life, which opens up so many doors of opportunities. This is like so huge, because so many people are blocked in so many different ways. And so sometimes you're supposed to be getting like those favor, that blessings and things like blessings rather, that are supposed to be coming into your life, but they are not coming into your life because you are blocked in different areas. So when you do that Ebo, it balances things out, and you start to get that favor. Things sometimes that you're not even expecting just start to happen. Excuse me. Sometimes things that you're not even expecting just begin to happen in your life just because you did Ebo, and it might not even be related to anything that came out in the reading. Like, that happens all the time for me and so many of our clients. You are very welcome. You said you appreciate it. You're very, very welcome. It also works as a form of correction. So, we all get out of balance sometimes. And that also comes back to, that karma, that energy that we built up. So if we've done negative things, the Ebo will come in and clear it out, but also course correct you. So it's not just about, I just want to get rid of all my bad karma. Nah, you get rid of it, but you also need to understand the lesson that was inherent in that process, okay? And so it clears it up, and it also gets you back on track so that you don't keep going down the wrong road and experiencing the same problems over and over again. So, guys, if you have any more questions for me, feel free to leave them on any platform. This is what I really wanted to share with you guys today, and I hope that it has been tremendously helpful along your journey, to help you along your journey, rather. Any more questions from me from anybody? I know you guys are a little bit delayed on IG, so I'm going to give you a few more seconds because you may have not heard what I just said. Okay, you're very, very welcome, guys. Very welcome to all who joined. Thank you guys for your support as well. And anybody who missed any part of it, be sure to check it out on my YouTube channel at Asanee44. The whole thing is there. I'm going to get in and clean it up in a few days and also put it on Spotify. So if that's your platform, that's your thing, it'll be on Spotify as well, probably by Wednesday. All righty, guys. Well, Ashe, guys, please have a very blessed and beautiful day and beyond.